Hi everyone, this is Steve Palladino from Palladino Power Project, bringing you another video. This one I'm calling Houston, we have a problem, and it's it's really the point here is going to be bringing awareness to reading your files, particularly for races, but also CP tests. Those key data points that you're going to want for your power duration curve or estimating your CP, your FTP. Um, and that one thing that I want you to be a little bit more aware of and use this video as a demonstration is this right here, air power. If you have a non-wind pod, then air power is always going to be zero. It's going to be 0%. Whether you're on a treadmill, whether you're outside, regardless of the shoe that you're wearing, etc. If you have a wind pod, then usually you're going to have air power, even if it's 1%. Um, I say usually because I can come up with a scenario of a one-way run with a heavy tailwind, um, in which case it might end up being 0%. But the scenario is a very an extreme outlier as a example for what can give you 0% air power under normal circumstances, normal functioning pod circumstances. But if you have a wind pod and you finish a CP test or a race and you see 0% air power, something is off. Something is wrong because you're not likely in that outlier scenario of a one-way race with this ferocious tailwind. More likely, what could be the explanations for 0% air power when you have a wind stride pod? Okay, one explanation is that you're on a treadmill. And this is a CP test that's done on a treadmill. I could identify it because of the less stochasticity. There's less variation in the power. It's not as bumpy. It's more of a fine line rather than a really bumpy, choppy line. But one explanation of 0% air power is the person is running on a treadmill, and that's normal. That's expected. Um, and I'll come back to that example in just a few moments. The other time you can get 0% out air power is if the uh, reporting of air power is erroneous. In other words, the pod is not oriented straight ahead. It's off to the side because of the shoe's lacing pattern or placement. So, in other words, malalignment of the pod, or let's say there's a lace right in front of the wind port, obstructing the wind port. There's another reason. Or if the wind port's obstructed, there's a number of them. Most frequently, it has to do with pod shoe interface and the orientation of the pod. So if you have that scenario, and this happens, people run races and run treadmills, and their pod's always reporting air power for their training runs, but they switch shoes to a Vaporfly or some other shoe where the lacing pattern is different and the pod is maloriented, and you end up with 0% air power. That's a problem. That's a problem because your race or your CP test, because it's erroneously not reporting that air power, the total power here. So if I take this particular example right here, this 13 and a half minute test segment, 0% air power when I focus on that, 286 watts is what the power was for that particular segment. 286 watts. But had there been air power, that would have been added on top of that 286, and the power would have been higher. So, if you do a CP test on a treadmill, there's going to be zero air power. The CP that you get as a result of that CP test is only valid for the treadmill. You can't take that CP and use it for outdoors, because when you go to outdoors, you should and will be getting normal reported air power. By how much? It depends on how big you are. It depends on the wind conditions. It depends on how fast you are running. So it could be anywhere from 2% if it's a slow run. It could be 3, 4, 5% for a run that's near threshold. So the power, your CP from the treadmill CP test, is not portable to the outside running. It's far better if you do running on treadmill and outside. It's better to do your CP test outside, and that way you can subtract the air power, a known air power, to get your indoor CP with zero air power. So you can actually, if you run your CP test outside, you can get 2 CP estimates, one for the outside with air power and one for the inside on the treadmill with zero air power. But again, if you do a CP test on a treadmill, then it's going to have 0% air power. The test can be valid for the treadmill, but it won't be valid for outside running, and you'll have to sort of guesstimate what percent you need to add to whatever the CP was. So whatever the CP value that resulted from this test, you'll have to add X percent to that for outside running, and that's going to be a guesstimate. Like I said, it could be the CP, the treadmill CP to outdoor CP may be somewhere 3, 4, 5% higher outside. Because that's what people normally have for air power when they're running around their CP or FTP. So the other thing is, let's say you had one of those erroneous air power where the pod was malaligned on the shoe or obstructed or what have you, such that it should have been reporting air power outside, but now it's reporting zero air power. Well, that is an unfortunate circumstance because the power that's reported, again, I'll highlight on this one, the 286 for this is the power that's reported for that race outside is going to be lower than what it would have been by X percent, whatever the percent would have been had air power been reported properly. So the point here with the video is get in the habit of checking your air power when you're looking at these things. If it's a treadmill, expect it to be. If you're outside and you're using a wind pod, it should be higher than 0%. And if it's 0%, then your CP test is not really valid, at least not valid for outside. If you did it outside, or if you did a race, your power is going to be lower than what it would have been. It's going to be less influential on your power duration curve, It's going to be less representative of what your power should have been had air power been reported properly. Hopefully this helps. It's an important habit to get into, is checking air power. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.